Airspace violation triggers NATO talks. Estonia triggers NATO Article 4 after Russian jets breach airspace in major Baltic security crisis. Estonia has formally requested urgent NATO consultations under Article 4 of the alliance's treaty after Russian fighter jets violated its airspace on Friday, marking one of the most serious provocations in the Baltic region in recent years. According to Estonia's foreign ministry, three Russian MiG-31 jets crossed into Estonian skies without clearance and remained for 12 minutes over the Gulf of Finland. Now let's dig into this story together on the AI podcast.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty serious happening right now on NATO's eastern border. Estonia has formally asked for urgent talks with its allies. They've invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty.
Right. And this was triggered by, well, what Estonia is calling an unprecedented violation of its airspace by Russian fighter jets.
An unprecedented violation.
Yeah, and what's really striking, I think, is how quickly this is happening again.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the second time Article 4 has been triggered in just 1 week.
A week. Wow, Poland just did this, right? After those Russian drones near their border.
Exactly. So it feels less like isolated incidents now and more like, well, a pattern. A definite spike in tension that's forcing a formal alliance response repeatedly.
Okay. So our mission today is to really dig into the sources on this. We need to understand, what exactly did these Russian jets do? What does invoking Article 4 actually mean? What happens next? And the military and political reaction, too. Plus, how this fits into the bigger picture, the sort of escalating pressure all along that eastern edge of NATO.
It's crucial context, because these aren't just minor blips anymore. The risk of this conflict spilling over, even accidentally, feels higher with these kinds of events.
The language used in the report seems much sharper now, too, calling it a test of resolve.
It is. It's moved beyond routine probing.
Yeah.
We need to look at the details that make this specific incident, as the Estonians say, so brazen.
All right, let's start right there. The incident itself. What are the specifics? We know it involved Russian jets.
3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets. That's what Estonia reported. They apparently entered Estonian airspace over the Gulf of Finland near an island called Vainlu.
Okay. And how long were they there?
The violation lasted for a total of 12 minutes.
12 minutes. That feels significant. It's not just a quick dash across the line.
No, it's definitely not. 12 minutes is ample time for air defenses to react, for political decisions to be made. But it's not just the duration.
What else?
The sources really highlight 3 things that made this particularly provocative. First, these jets apparently filed 0 flight plans. Nothing.
Okay, no flight plan.
Second, they kept their transponders completely switched off, just dark.
Right. And third,
They made no attempt to communicate with Estonian air traffic control, even though they were in control airspace.
okay, let's pause on the transponder thing. For anyone listening who might not know, turning off your transponder, what does that actually signal, practically speaking?
Well, it's a deliberate choice to be invisible to standard air traffic systems. Your transponder basically tells everyone, here I am, this is who I am. Switching it off makes you a ghost to civilian radar.
Creates a safety risk,
A
surely.
huge safety risk. But more than that, in a military context near a border, it strongly signals hostile intent, or at least a deliberate attempt to probe defenses without being easily identified. It says this wasn't an accident.
And the type of plane, the MiG-31, does that matter?
Oh, absolutely. The MiG-31 isn't just any plane. It's a foxhound, a high-speed, high-altitude interceptor. It's designed for air combat, not gentle reconnaissance. Sending those in is, well, it sends a message.
So it sounds much less like Russia's explanation, which was what? A scheduled flight?
Yeah, that was the claim from Moscow's defense ministry. A scheduled flight strictly in international airspace over neutral waters.
Which directly contradicts the Estonian account on every key point.
Completely. And that denial is important because it leaves no room for simple de-escalation based on, admitting a mistake. It forces the issue into the NATO political arena.
And the military response from NATO was immediate, wasn't it?
Yes, the sources say Allied forces responded immediately and intercepted the Russian aircraft. NATO scrambled fighters.
From where?
This is interesting. Jets were scrambled from Finland, Sweden, and Italy, all operating under NATO's Baltic Air Policing mission.
Finland and Sweden involved directly in the intercept? That's significant.
Hugely significant. It shows just how quickly and deeply they're integrating into NATO's operational command, even before Sweden's final ratification steps are complete. NATO itself called the whole thing yet another example of reckless Russian behavior.
Can you briefly explain the Baltic Air Policing mission? What is it exactly?
Sure. It's basically NATO's way of ensuring the airspace integrity of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, since they don't have the full fighter jet capabilities to do it themselves 24/7.
So allies rotate in to provide that cover.
Exactly. Different NATO members send fighter detachments on rotation. Seeing Finland and Sweden scrambled immediately under that mission banner, it shows their air forces are already plugged in, functionally part of the alliance's defense right now.
It effectively extends that defensive perimeter.
Right. Sends a strong message. The response is unified and geographically broader now.
Okay, so military response, fast, integrated, involves new partners. Now, the political response, invoking Article 4. Estonia's Prime Minister, Kristen Michal, made the call. Explain Article 4 for us. How serious is this compared to, say, the famous Article 5?
Okay, Article 4 is the alliance's formal way of saying we need to talk urgently. Any member can trigger it if they feel their territory, their independence, or their security is threatened.
So it forces a meeting.
It forces consultation. All 32 members have to convene and discuss the threat. It's the big political alarm bell within NATO. Think of it as the step before Article 5.
In Article 5 is the attack on one is an attack on all clause.
Precisely. Article 5 implies a military response is likely. Article 4 is about assessing the threat together and deciding on joint steps. That could mean more sanctions, deploying more troops, issuing a strong diplomatic warning. Lots of options, short of direct conflict.
And Prime Minister Michal specifically said Estonia wants shared situational awareness and agreement on joint steps.
Exactly. They want the whole alliance to be on the same page about what this incident means and agree on a collective response.
Yeah.
Not just Estonia acting alone.
And the context here, as you said right at the start, is that this is the second time in a single week.
That's the critical point right now. Before this recent flurry, Article 4 had only been invoked, 7 times in NATO's entire history?
7 times since 1949.
Yeah. So having 2 invocations back-to-back like this, it fundamentally changes the atmosphere. It suggests these border incidents aren't just isolated tests anymore. They're being seen as a deliberate, sustained campaign, creating security crises that demand constant, top-level political attention from the entire alliance.
Which leaves us to the wider regional picture. This Estonian incident, it didn't happen in a vacuum, did it?
Not at all. The sources make it clear this fits into a much broader pattern of activity along NATO's eastern flank. The air domain especially seems under constant pressure.
Like the drone incidents further south.
Exactly. Just in the last few days, Poland reported intercepting multiple Russian drones that violated its airspace, and Romania detected at least one near its border along the Danube. This was all happening while Russia was also launching major strikes inside Ukraine.
So you've got pressure points from the Baltic Sea all the way down near the Black Sea simultaneously.
So, stretching from Estonia in the north through Poland down to Romania near the Danube Delta. That's a huge geographic area under stress at the same time.
Strategically, what does that achieve for Russia? Spreading the tension like that.
Well, it forces NATO to spread its attention and its resources. Instead of focusing defenses in one spot, the alliance has to monitor and potentially react across thousands of miles of borderland. It stretches capabilities,
And NATO's response to that broader pressure
has been to publicly commit to reinforcing that eastern flank. We're talking more fighter jets, more troops on the ground, shifting posture from just reassuring allies to actively deterring aggression.
Bringing concrete examples of that.
Oh, yes. Aircraft from the UK, France, Germany, Denmark, they're all being integrated into joint air defense operations in the region now. It's not just talk. It's the physical movement of significant military assets to bolster defenses.
Does that reinforcement actually make a difference against these kinds of probes, or is it just symbolic?
Oh, it makes a real difference. It increases the density of air defenses, making violations harder. But maybe more importantly, it raises the stakes for any future incident. Well, if a Russian jet violates airspace again, the chances increase that it's intercepted not just by an Estonian plane, but by, say, a British or German one operating under NATO command.
Right. That instantly makes it a multinational incident.
Exactly. Not just a bilateral issue between Russia and Estonia, but an immediate crisis involving multiple major NATO powers. That changes the calculation.
Okay, let's get to the why. We've covered what the MiGs, the 12 minutes, no transponders, and the how, the NATO response, Article 4. But why do this? Why risk such a blatant provocation knowing it would trigger this kind of unified NATO response?
The most talked about theory comes from Estonia's ambassador to NATO, Christian Puick. He suggested this is fundamentally about distraction.
Distraction from what?
Distraction from Ukraine. The thinking is Moscow wants to force NATO to turn inward, to focus its energy and resources on protecting its own borders, collective defense, as he put it, rather than focusing outwards on sending aid to Kyiv.
So create fires along NATO's own borders to pull attention and resources away from the main fire in Ukraine.
That seems to be the assessment. Make NATO constantly worry about its own security posture, tying up planes, troops, intelligence assets, and political bandwidth that might otherwise go towards supporting Ukraine.
And the sources confirm this wasn't just a one-off random event?
No, Estonia's defense minister, Hanno Pevkur, called this specific 12-minute incursion unprecedented in its nature, maybe its duration or the aircraft type. But the reports also note this was the fourth reported Russian airspace violation in Estonia just this year, 2025.
Fourth this year already.
Yeah, so it points to a consistent, perhaps escalating pressure campaign.
Let me push back on that theory slightly, though. Does invoking Article 4, forcing NATO allies to consult, actually stop them from sending aid to Ukraine? Can't they do both?
That's a fair question. They can do both,
Yeah.
but resources and political focus aren't infinite, right? When NATO has to hold urgent consultations, dedicate intelligence assets to analyzing the immediate threat on its border, brief political leaders, it consumes time and energy. And domestically, in allied countries, these incidents create pressure to spend more on their own national defense, potentially making it politically harder to allocate billions for foreign aid packages. So it might not stop aid entirely, but the goal could be to slow it down, complicate it, distract from it. If it achieves that, from Moscow's perspective, it's potentially a success.
I see. So how are the allies reacting politically beyond the military scramble and the Article 4 meeting itself? What's the tone?
The tone, especially from the EU and frontline states, has been really sharp and unified. Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief and herself Estonian, remember, called it an extremely dangerous provocation.
Strong words.
Very. And she explicitly said Putin was testing the West's resolve. No mincing words there.
And we heard from the European Commission president, too.
Yes, Ursula von der Leyen echoed that. Pledged determination. We will respond to every provocation with determination while investing in a stronger eastern flank. They're framing it as a direct challenge that requires a firm collective EU and NATO response.
What about across the Atlantic? U.S. reaction?
Crucial, obviously, for any NATO response. President Trump acknowledged it. His words were characteristically blunt. I don't love it. I don't like when that happens. Could be big trouble.
Okay. So acknowledges the seriousness, potential for escalation.
Right. It signals U.S. awareness and concern, even if the phrasing is different from European leaders. The key is that the U.S. is engaged in the Article 4 process.
So the bottom line here, according to another Estonian voice, Ambassador Sven Sakov, seems to be about needing concrete actions now.
Exactly. Sakov emphasized the need for clear, practical steps to boost air defense. He made the point that while Estonia would be incredibly worried facing this alone, their determination comes from knowing they'll defend themselves together with our allies.
That really sums up the purpose of Article 4, doesn't it? Turning individual fear into collective action. Okay, so let's try and synthesize this for you, our listeners. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive? First, the specific way this breach happened. The MiG-31's 12 minutes, no transponders, no communication, points to an intentional, provocative act, not an accident.
Second, invoking Article 4 isn't just symbolic. It forces an immediate mandatory consultation among all 32 allies to agree on the threat and the next steps.
Right. And third, the response, both military and political, has been swift and coordinated. We're seeing jets scrambled involving Finland and Sweden, and concrete steps to reinforce defenses all along that eastern border from the Baltic down to the Black Sea.
Yeah, and you really can't overstate the seriousness here. These airspace violations keep probing, keep pushing, threatening to widen the conflict. That shared situational awareness Estonia asked for, it's absolutely vital right now to maintain unity and deterrence.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to consider, building on that whole strategic distraction idea we discussed. If Ambassador Prick is right, if a primary Russian goal is to force NATO to focus inwards, to divert attention and resources from supporting Ukraine by creating these border crises, well, how does invoking Article 4 play into that? Because Article 4 does exactly what Moscow supposedly wants, in a way. It forces all 32 allies to stop, consult, focus intensely on their own collective security, maybe allocate resources there?
Right.
So the question is the necessary act of collective self-defense triggered by a real threat, simultaneously fulfilling part of the adversary's strategic aim to dilute support for Kyiv? It's a complex dynamic to think about.
Okay, do you think the Russia's airspace violation was an intentional provocation or a mistake? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.